Hello? Hello, Bryan?
Yeah, just a minute. Hey, listen, sorry, I don't have a lot of time. It's Bryan from This, That, and the Other. Look, okay, I want to tell you everything. I want to tell you the truth about wood. You want to know about the real stuff? You want to know why the earth is hollow and why we're being run by aliens? You want to know about the stuff they're putting in your Gatorade and why you should be eating your dogs and why renewable resources are a lie and we're living inside of a hologram. And I'll tell you all this, but you have to listen to This, That, and the Other. You have to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. Don't tell Sam though. Don't tell him.
What are you doing? Are you making an ad without me?
No, listen, I gotta go. Subscribe to This, That, and the Other.
You bastard.
9/11 was a lie. What happened to Bill? What it do, my dudes? This is your boy Bryan from This, That, and the Other, and it's What's Hood with FC. A pretty hard look at the Latinx culture and community from the streets with Forever Cabron. Right off the bat, it ain't FC. That's right, it's me, your boy B. I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but sometimes that shit happens, fam. FC is doing well. Nothing bad is happening. He is currently starting a new job. He's got different hours. You already know how it is when that grind starts. You got to stay 100% dedicated to it. So I decided I'm gonna step in. On the weeks he can't get any episodes, kind of set up. I'm gonna sit down. We gonna break some things down. Look into some stuff. It's gonna be a bit of a different show. I won't lie. But I think it's still we're still gonna carry the same vibe, the same espiritu. You know what I mean? You already know. You already know how it is, bro. So first off, let's get those shout outs out the way. You know what I'm saying? Shouts out to Binge on this. The network. The homies. Shout out to This, That, and the Other. That's the boys, me and Sam. Shout out to Happy News with Perry Kurtz, our 69-year-old comedian. Shout out to Reading Ronan. Shout out to Roll 420s, our new D&D show coming out. Shout out to everybody. If FC does the shout outs at the beginning, that shit, so it's just I gotta do it like that. But okay. Yeah, so that's it. I hope everybody's doing good during this quarantine. Me, I'm doing all right. I'm working. Thankfully I got some work at a local dispensary. You know what I mean? It's awesome. It's dope. Ironically enough, when I first came out here, all I wanted to do was work with weed. I figured if I'm already consuming it, I already know about it. It's the easiest type of job, to sell something you know and love. And so it took me a little bit, but I got to figure it out. And thankfully, medical marijuana dispensaries are essential during this time. So you already know your boy, is working. Thankfully, while everybody else is kind of where they're at. But peace and blessings to yours. I hope everybody's doing well during all this. Just keep your head up, keep your chin up. This is gonna be over soon. So, and I'm also gonna do my best to try and limit the ums. This is the first time in a while that I've actually had to sit down and talk by myself. So I have to remind myself not to do the ums or to say the same word over and over again. But this is all part of it, right? This is what it's about. It's about sitting down, trying to learn something new, taking that information, making it your own, just going for it. So here we go. Today, guys, let's get back on track. Today, we're going to be talking about piñatas, bro. Yeah, we're going to talk about piñatas, bro. I don't know what you guys know about piñatas other than your standard movie sequence involving a piñata and an uncle getting hit in the nuts. For some of our other listeners who are familiar with the piñata, I'm going to kind of talk about sort of its origins and what it's about and sort of how we use it now, and so a little tidbits of information, from what I've looked up. So let's get into this shit. So a piñata, with the ñ, the funny N, is essentially, it's a container made of paper mache. The modern day piñata that we get for, the little cousins, and for the standard party. The one that's filled with candy and looks like El Batman. That's kind of what it was now. Filled with toys. Well, candy, really. It's not like anybody fills any of them bitches with toys anymore. And then you hang it up and you essentially go out and you beat the shit out of it. And then when it busts open all the little kids, your cousin would push you out the way and he would get those Tootsie Rolls first, and leave you with all the lemon heads. And that's what I know. The Señor Piñata situation. And piñatas are commonly associated with Mexico. That is just kind of the standard norm that we've all grown up with. Now, this is where it kind of gets a little bit interesting. So, the word piñata, they believe etymologically. See, man, my through research by breaking down the name and the words, they've discovered that it is a cousin of the Italian word piñata, which is said like that, exactly like that, Spanish, Italian accent and all. Pignatta. So what they believe to actually have happened, and again, I'll get into this a little bit more later, but the Spanish brought the European tradition to Mexico is what the assumption normally is. Now it goes even further than that, which is pretty cool. What they're saying, for the most part, the larger debate is that the origin of the piñata is not Spanish, but it is Chinese. It appears that the Chinese seem to have a similar version of the piñata in the form of a cow or an ox, which was typically used on the New Year. Essentially, it was pretty much for luck. I mean, the Chinese be doing everything for luck. I think they even ate that bat for luck, but look where that got us. And so the Chinese, they would decorate it, their piñata, and of course they don't say it like that. They go a piñata. That's not true, but so they would take that, they would fill it with all types of stuff. You know what I mean, to appease the gods, to have a favorable growing conditions. And it would be filled with seeds for the upcoming season, pretty colors that you would draw on it. Pretty much just your good old-fashioned standard piñata, which you can't go wrong with, especially in Chinatown or Chinaville. And that's kind of what they thought. After the piñata was broken, they would gather the remains and they would burn it, and they would keep that ash for good luck throughout the year, which I thought was very cool. It's very interesting. You forget, the Chinese came up with a lot of stuff. They've been around for so long, essentially gunpowder or fireworks. They're the ones who kind of have some of the longest, written history that's still available. Despite all of the beef that we have with the mighty red dragon, they know what they're doing, and they've been around for quite a long time to know certain things, the same way that the Aztecs and the Mayans were around before, they kind of disappeared. So it's very cool to know that we kind of have that in common with that. So this is where it gets kind of cool. I mean, the whole thing is cool. Like I said, this really looking at it, breaking down the reasons why people do things or what they're for. Obviously you can sit there and be staring and be like, oh well, it's a toy, like it's cool because it's something for kids, and like. But it's very neat. It kind of goes a little bit deeper in that. So, we go back to 14th century Europe, where essentially places like Spain and Italy would associate Lent with piñatas, right? So get this shit, right? So the first Sunday of Lent in Spain, they called that shit Piñata Sunday, bro. Can you imagine that shit, like Piñata Sunday? Like, oh, I just set up a date next week. I told her Piñata Sunday because, I don't want to spend any money, and I figure we just pick up the food from the piñatas that my homie Tim's going to bust open. And so they had Piñata Sundays, which essentially became an association with Lent. And there's even a celebration known as the Dance of the Piñata out there, which is, kind of wild. when you really think about it, because do they dance with the piñatas? What do they do? I mean, do they expect the piñatas to dance with each other? I need more explanations when it comes to that. And frankly, I didn't look up more on that. So you can do that. I believe me. It's quarantine. Figure it out. Like I said earlier, the Italian word piñata or piñata has an association with the Italian origin, or is an Italian origin, piñata, meaning essentially earthenware cook pot, which is why the Spanish initially used a plain clay container. So I've looked some of these up on my end. They're very much the way that they're described, literally a clay container before they get decorated up. Now look, between you and me, I don't even know why that would be like the first go-to thing that you would think to fill. Like, why a giant clay vase? I mean, there has to be a billion other, maybe not a billion, sure, but there has to be like a goat's bladder or something you could fill up, but a clay, like, why? It's almost like they would have filled up a glass fucking bowl if they had the chance, but they just figured, oh, we only have the clay, so we may as well go with the most dangerous thing we could possibly go with. But it just kind of seems crazy to me to think that they would do that, Leave it to the damn Spanish to think like that. But yeah, so that I thought that was crazy, making a clay pot out, which kind of blows my mind. Out of all the fucking containers that could possibly be done. So from there, they bring that cool ass fucking tradition of making piñatas over to Mexico. Around the 16th century, sort of during, the Reform era, when you have a lot of these like monks and you have a lot of these Catholic priests and Christian people coming out here to try and convert all these, Mexicans, everyone, the whole Latin American community pretty much south of Texas and including Texas, pretty much anything south of Oklahoma, you can call it. They showed up to try and essentially influence everybody with their religious views. So what they did, which was very cool, is they brought the piñata over and they found out that there was already a similar tradition in Mesoamerica at the time. Turns out, who would have thought, as if we weren't advanced enough, the Mayans and the Aztecs had similar traditions around the same era, or around the same time in the same era, which was kind of, the easiest way for the priests and everybody to convert people, was because essentially the Mayans had something very similar to the piñata tradition. They even blindfolded people in the same way that the Europeans were doing so that they could hit the piñata. And even the Aztecs, they used piñatas to commemorate the birth of their god. And I'm going to butcher this. Huitzilopochtli, their sun god. And so they were already doing this. So when you think about it from a conquest point of view, or you think about it of like an assimilation thing, it's so easier the way that, the Romans did when they took all the Zeus gods and they changed it to Jupiter and Pluto, and vice versa. Assimilation is so much easier when you already have something there to build foundations on. Same with Constantine. When he decided to change the religion at the very back end of his deathbed, it's just very, very easy to take something that has already been created by other people's minds and then use it for good and for evil. It can be used for in both ways. And what they did is the priests would come over and they essentially used it for evangelism. Oof, I was about to say Evangelion, which is an anime, which you guys should check out. But evangelism. That was their whole thing. They already knew that they were doing it. They essentially had the same holidays lined up as the Aztecs and the Mayans. And so they did, they 1 and 1 make 2. And they said, damn, why not? Why not take these foreigners, which ironically enough, they're the foreigners, they're the invaders. And they said to themselves, well, they're already making piñatas, and we have an association with the piñatas to our religion. Why not? And I'll get into that in a minute and I'll explain as to why. And they figured, well, fuck it, we may as well high five and bang their women and just, assimilate. And it's crazy, and it's kind of cool how the piñata helped a lot when you look into it. what essentially ends up happening is in 1586 in Alcoman, essentially in the modern state of Mexico, just north of Mexico City, a bunch of Augustinian monks modified European piñatas and created the Las Posadas traditions to co-opt the celebration of the birth of Huitzilopochtli, which again is the sun god for the Aztecs or the Mayans, one of the two. And so Las Posadas, which FC has talked about on previous episodes, is the... So, like, the way he explained it and the way that I looked it up on my back end is essentially the 9-day interval during the Christmas season, which represents the 9-month pregnancy of Mary. So, when FC was talking about it, he was talking about how people would go house to house. That's essentially what they're doing that for. It's a dramatization of original events, which happens. And so people in the Christian faith, they, especially, the Hispanic community, were reintroduced to this in the 16th century by, Spanish saints. And so that is what the association of piñatas and La Posada have together. Mainly because that winter solstice festival, that Christmas time moment was so important to the Mexican people as it already was, during December 12th, according to the calendar that the Spanish used during the time. So the Aztecs at that time were going off of their calendar. And so the mother of their gods, which, and again, I don't want to butcher this, but Tonantzin Guadalupe, which ironically enough they called Guadalupe. And then again, there's a whole nother episode that FC dives into sort of on the cultural significance of Guadalupe or La Virgen de Guadalupe. She was essentially celebrated during that winter solstice time, which was just perfect, right? What are the odds that it matched up essentially for the celebration of Christmas? So it was perfect. It was perfect. They couldn't have found a better place to invade and kind of assimilate. And so what ends up happening is, Diego de Sorria, Friar Diego de Sorria, obtains a papal bull from Pope Sixtus V, stating that Christmas Mass should be observed through Mexico on the 9 days preceding Christmas Day. Even though the roots are, it has heavy roots in Catholicism, obviously. Mexico, but most Latinos follow the tradition, which is interesting because, again, I know my family did, and we were Colombian. So all of this stuff is admired. Like I said, pretty much south, or, pardon me, not admired. It is admired, but it is acknowledged pretty much south of Mexico and onward as, a religious sort of significance. So, and again, FC has this really good episode about Las Posadas. He breaks it down. He talks about why they make everything that they make and sort of going house to house. So if you guys want to listen to more of that, I think it's like episode 16 or something. I know it's during the Christmas time. So at that point, the priests got really hyped up. They essentially created Las Posadas in an effort to sort of match what was going on at the time with the Aztec people and the Mexican people. And so that's what ends up happening. So here's where it gets kind of cool. The Mexican Catholic interpretation of the piñata essentially rests on the ideal of man's struggle against temptation, which is kind of obvious when you take a step back and look at it. Because the whole idea is that man has to take his aggression, sort of, and this is man and women, so it's very primal, the act of breaking a piñata. It's fun. I'm not discounting that. When you look deeper into it, and sure, maybe it's not that deep, but when we're sitting down together right now in this situation, we're talking about what's hood, then when you look at it at that point of view, you're taking all of this rage and all of these emotions that you can't properly display in any other event, and you are unleashing it on a piñata. And it's the same thing that happens with sports, and it's the same thing that happens with maybe even recording or whatever. But there are certain ways and certain times and certain feelings that we can't get out without a certain outlet. And I think it was so smart of them to take that. Because, again, you could have done You could make that association with anything. Man's constant struggle with temptation. You could get a whole bunch of nuts, and you could make a tradition around nuts and be like, oh, look how you constantly struggle against the mighty nut because you just want the flesh, which is what my ex-wife used to say. But what I'm saying is, what's the piñata in itself was already being used. It was something that had already been culturally observed by the people at the time. So it was so easy, it was so flawless for them to take that, something that had already been there, and just adopt it to their beliefs. And that's what they did. A lot of piñatas have 7 points, which points to the 7 sins, the 7 deadly sins. Which I don't know all the sins because fuck them, I do them every day. The pot in itself represents evil, and the candy and the fruit represents traditional evils and just kind of gluttony and all that type of crazy shenanigans inside. All of this is coming from the point of view of Catholicism again. I'm not saying that this is why I bust open piñatas. I bust open piñatas because of the Tootsie Rolls. We've already covered this. But this is their thinking, essentially, why they associated the piñata in this time and the way that they did it with religion. The person that gets blindfolded is essentially the person who's operating on faith. Again, another cool kind of idea based on your own belief in yourself, which is where I believe faith comes from. I'm saying, and I'm trying not to, and I'm amazed that FC can keep this to under like 30 minutes, because as soon as my engine starts rolling on this stuff, I could sit here and talk, probably because I'm lit too. But anyways, so that person is who's blindfolded is essentially representing faith. Everybody sitting around, sitting, singing, shouting is supposedly supposed to represent the disorientation of like real life and like what temptation creates. Again, I'm not really that back end part I'm not so sure about. In some traditions, they have the participants turn 33 times. I know sometimes when it's for the birthdays, you do it for how many times or how old you're getting. Again, 33 times for supposedly how long Jesus lived. And that's it, and that's kind of what they did on their side to sort of make that association. I mean, you can even go to Acolman in Mexico State and you'll see a statue of Franciscan, the friar Franciscan, hitting a piñata. That's how important the piñata is to the Mexican culture, to the Mexican people. And that's something I had no idea about. That's something that I really couldn't understand on my end. But there you go. That's a little bit of a sort of as far as the religious aspect, which I find very interesting for the piñata. Obviously, the piñata has lost a lot of religious significance over these, couple hundred years. It's clearly not being busted out during baptisms and, Sunday, Easter. It's not being used typically to represent any of those Catholic, ideals. It now operates as fully as a candy vending machine as you possibly could expect. It is very huge. There are certain city-states and certain towns in Mexico that heavily rely on the creation of piñatas to survive economically. It's and that alone is something very admirable. You have about 400 people in certain towns who essentially make their living during like a 3-month period, and they have to do it kind of like just on the fly and in their own traditional Mexican Hispanic methods, which again is just such a deep cry of dedication and resilience, especially in the face of what Mexico constantly has to deal with, and has had to deal with over the past couple hundred years. So that's the cool thing about the piñata. Again, not really a lot of religious significance to it. You don't really bust them out during La Posadas. A lot. I mean, it could be possible that they are. I mean, you could. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, honestly, you get a piñata for whatever, dog. Like for getting 2 bags of chips at a vending machine. Like the piñata is whatever it is. Just don't get a clay pot and start beating the shit out of it and think it's a good idea as a piñata, because CPS is gonna get called and you're gonna have those kids taken away. Yeah, and that's that's pretty much it. About the piñata on that end. Obviously, a lot of the piñatas nowadays are popular characters. They're like Nemo, Wolverine, El Batman, or El Hombre Murciélago, as I call him, El Spider-Man. All of those, and it does, and sometimes they do get in trouble. They get seized at the border sometimes because Marvel and Disney, especially Disney now that they own Marvel characters, they're very stringent on that, and they will bust open the whole van if they see a whole bunch of piñatas in there that look like El Hulk, and they will take everything, and it's kind of a bummer. Especially because you can go around and you can see Calvin and Hobbes stickers and stuff like that, sitting around, and and nobody really, not that nobody really says too much about it, but I mean they get to do it on their end, and so it is kind of a bummer on that side. And that's about it. Yeah, San Juan de la Puerta, in south of the Cueramaro municipality in Guanajuato. They pretty much, they put out 16,000 piñatas a month, man. 16,000. Can you imagine that? 16,000 piñatas a month. 400 families in the town of San Juan de Puerte. And so, during 2008, apparently they struggled a lot to maintain survival, just because how hard they're. And I can't even imagine what's going on right now. To them, especially with this quarantine that's going on. There are even some prisons, some penal facilities that allow their prisoners to make piñatas and sell them, which was kind of cool. I thought that was very neat. And apparently the people in the area buy them. They love them. They support their local criminals, which is great. And then one of the other things that people love in Mexico is having political figures made out of piñatas, making political figures. So they'll have whatever, they're maybe not their president because they don't want to get murked, or any of the narcos, but Donald Trump or whatever they like to come out of. You can make essentially piñatas, just paper mache with cardboard. So if you find a good cartero, if you find someone who knows what he's doing, they could hypothetically make anything for you. A cartoneria could make you a giant 3-foot, grape. I don't know. That would just be like a purple balloon. Yeah, and that's and that's the sort of the deal with piñatas, how they work, and how they kind of have survived as long as they have. Europe kind of still maintains some of their piñata-like traditions. In Denmark, they have something called, and I am for sure going to butcher this, but I'm going to say it because it'll be funny. Slå katten af en tonden, which is hit the cat out of the barrel. A wooden barrel is struck to release candy. Of course, fucking Denmark would come up with some whack-ass shit like that. In Catalonia, there's a Christmastide tradition known as Fer cagar el tío. Oh, I'm sorry, they're Spanish. Catalonia. Fer cagar el tío. There we go. Maybe that's Italian. Whatever. Make the log defecate. For whatever godforsaken reason, there's a whole bunch of people here who seem to have some type of odd fascination with the log. I don't know. Maybe there's something in the log in the past. Who the fuck knows? But it's fer cagar el tío. Fer cagar el tío. Make the log defecate. Apparently, a log is wrapped with a blanket for whatever reason and fed grass. On Christmas Eve, the log is repeatedly struck with sticks in order to make the log defecate. The blanket is then removed to reveal the gifts that have been expelled by the log. So weird. It's just so weird. Italy still plays their games with the piñata. They call it pentolaccia. Pentolaccia used to be celebrated the first Sunday of Lent. So they're still riding high on that. India rocks something along those lines as well. They enjoy Lord Krishna's childhood portrayal as the mischievous Makchanchor, the butter thief. Mr. Lord Krishna, he was about stealing butter, dog. He lived that life. So what the Indians do is they fill clay pots with buttermilk, money, or treats in lieu of butter, because I guess that's smart. And they try and get youngsters to break it. They get teams. Wow, that's crazy. They get teams in great planning, skill, and effort to form human pyramids, each higher than the other, in an attempt to break the pot and claim the prize. Shout out to India, and shout out to our boy Keshav Kumar, who sponsors the show. But why buttermilk? Why money or treats? You know what I'm saying? Maybe Maybe like toilet paper, dog. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Maybe like, I don't know. Maybe like an end to the caste system. I don't know. But India's all about that life. They love that shit. Even the Japanese they be playing a sick ass little type of game. They call that shit suikawara. Suikawara. They play that shit with a watermelon. So because they're fucking Japanese. I don't want to know what they did to that watermelon. Hopefully, the hole they made in it and was consenting. And that's it. That's it, man. That's a little bit of history on the piñata. So the next time you have a piñata, your quinceañera, your birthday, or you just dating a girl whose kid is just really, not into you, and you're trying to just like, you're trying to get him to, understand that you hanging out with his mama and not him, and it's not about him. It's about like, busting his mama out. Maybe get a piñata. You know what I'm saying? Maybe put that piñata in a way that it would make it physically impossible for that little man to bust up there. Unless he could find a bunch of Indian kids to make a giant fucking human pyramid and get all that buttermilk out of the piñata. But there you go. That's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that quick lesson about piñatas. If you guys want to hear other cool episodes, just go back and listen to episodes 1 through 23, 24, 25, I believe. FC is gonna have new episodes out, so I don't want you to worry about that. Like I said, I'm just filling in with this quarantine stuff just because he's technically he's essential and I'm not right now. So it's just important for me that he kind of maintains his schedule on his side and work and the family comes first. So but with that being said, please, if you guys like what we're doing here, leave us a review on iTunes. 5 stars, 1 star, I don't care. Just leave us a review. Share our videos. We have plenty of clips online on YouTube at Binge on This. You can find our Instagram at Binge on This channel. You can find FC at What's Hood _ with FC. Or I'm sorry, What's Hood WFC. So that's What's Hood with FC. If you guys want to leave a comment or if you guys have something that you want him to talk about, you can leave all that information there. You can send him an email. But we'd be more than happy to kick it with you guys. And I hope that you guys continue to listen. I hope that you guys enjoy not only this show, but Happy News with Harry Kurtz, This, That, and the Other, Reading Ronin, Sam of All Trades, Roll 420s. Yeah, and that's it, guys. Thank you so much. I love you guys, and we will catch you at the next light.